The morning mist covered the jungle floor like a white blanket. Tall trees stretched toward the purple sky, their branches so thick that only small rays of light could break through. The air was warm and heavy with the smell of wet earth and strange flowers. In this ancient forest, 3 hunters moved silently through the undergrowth. Turan led the group. He was the eldest among them, his blue skin marked with scars from many battles. His yellow eyes scanned the forest floor, searching for any sign of their prey. Behind him walked Nea, a young female hunter with quick reflexes and sharp instincts. The third member was Koro, a strong warrior who carried a bow made from the bones of a flying beast. They had been tracking the creature for 3 days now. The village elders had sent them on this mission after strange sounds began echoing through the jungle. Something large had arrived in their territory, something that made the ground shake when it walked. The local animals had fled from an entire section of the forest. Whatever this beast was, it needed to be found and studied. Soran raised his hand, signaling the others to stop. He knelt down and touched the soil with his long fingers. There was a deep impression in the ground, unlike anything he had ever seen. It was not a footprint from any creature he knew. The shape was rectangular, with strange patterns pressed into the mud. Nea moved closer to examine the marking. Her tail swished nervously behind her. She had hunted many dangerous beasts in her young life, but this felt different. There was something unnatural about these tracks. They were too perfect, too even in their spacing. Koro whispered something in their native tongue. He pointed toward a broken tree ahead. The trunk had been snapped in half like a small stick. Whatever had done this possessed incredible strength. The break was clean and sudden, not chewed or clawed like predator damage. The 3 hunters continued forward, their bare feet making no sound on the forest floor. They communicated through hand signals and subtle movements of their ears. Speaking aloud might alert their prey to their presence. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the destruction became more obvious. More trees were broken or pushed aside. Strange metal objects lay scattered on the ground. Soran picked one up and turned it over in his hands. It was small, cylindrical, and made of a material he did not recognize. It was harder than any stone, but lighter than wood. Nea found something else. It was a piece of fabric caught on a thorny bush. The material was unlike the woven plant fibers her people used. This was smooth and strong, colored in patterns of green and brown that seemed designed to blend with the forest. The hunters exchanged worried glances. This was no ordinary beast they were tracking. Whatever had come to their jungle was something entirely new, something from beyond their understanding. A sudden roar shook the forest. The sound was so loud the birds exploded from the treetops in panicked flight. The roar echoed through the dense jungle, bouncing off ancient tree trunks and distant mountains. It was a mechanical sound, harsh and powerful, nothing like any animal call. Soran pressed himself against a massive tree trunk. His heart pounded in his chest. He had faced charging beasts 3 times his size without fear, but this sound sent a primal terror through his body. Nea and Koro took cover nearby, their weapons ready but their hands trembling. The ground began to vibrate. Heavy footsteps approached, each one sending small tremors through the earth. The hunters could feel the impacts through their feet, growing stronger with each passing moment. Branches snapped and bushes were crushed as something massive moved through the forest toward them. Then they saw it. The creature that emerged from the green shadows was beyond anything in their myths or legends. It stood twice as tall as the tallest hunter, walking on 2 thick legs that ended in flat, heavy feet. Its body was covered in hard plates that reflected the dim jungle light. 2 long arms hung at its sides, each one ending in strange appendages that looked capable of crushing stone. But the most terrifying part was its head. A smooth, rounded surface with a single glowing eye that swept back and forth, casting a beam of red light through the mist. The eye stopped when it detected movement. It turned directly toward Suarez's hiding spot. The elder hunter did not move. He barely breathed. His people had survived for generations by understanding the behaviors of dangerous creatures. If he remained still, perhaps this metal beast would lose interest and move on. The creature took a step forward, then another. Its movements were strangely smooth, almost graceful despite its massive size. The glowing eye remained fixed on Suaran's position. Suddenly, a voice emerged from the creature. It was not the roar they had heard before. This was different. It sounded like speech, but in a language completely foreign to the hunters. The words were short and sharp, repeated several times as if asking a question. Naya made a critical error. Fear overcame her training, and she broke from cover, running toward the deeper jungle. The movement caught the creature's attention immediately. Its head snapped toward her, and it raised one of its strange arms. A flash of light erupted from the limb, striking a tree directly in Naya's path. The trunk exploded into splinters, blocking her escape. She fell backward, screaming in terror. Koro acted on instinct. He drew back his bow and released an arrow directly at the creature's glowing eye. The projectile flew true, striking the red light with perfect accuracy. But instead of penetrating, the arrow shattered against the surface and fell harmlessly to the ground. The creature turned toward Koro. Another mechanical roar escaped from its body, this one shorter and somehow less threatening. It lowered its arm and stood motionless, watching the three hunters. Suaran stepped out from behind his tree. If they were going to die, he would face his death with honor. He spread his arms wide, showing he held no weapon. His yellow eyes met the single red eye of the beast. For a long moment, nothing happened. The jungle fell silent. Even the insects stopped their constant buzzing. Then the creature did something completely unexpected. A section of its chest opened with a hissing sound. Steam escaped from within, and the hunters watched in amazement as a smaller figure emerged from inside the metal beast. This being was different. It had soft, pale skin and strange hair on top of its head. It wore the same patterned material they had found on the bush. Two small eyes looked at them with curiosity rather than hostility. The being from inside the metal creature was a human. His name was Captain Marcus Webb, and he was the pilot of the military exploration mech designated Titan 7. He had been separated from his unit during a survey mission and had spent 3 days trying to find his way back to base camp. Marcus raised his hands in a gesture of peace. He had studied dozens of alien species during his training and knew that showing empty hands was often understood as non-threatening. He spoke slowly, even though he knew they could not understand his words. The translation device in his helmet began working, analyzing the sounds the blue-skinned aliens made as they spoke to each other. It would take time to build a basic vocabulary, but Marcus was patient. He had survived alone in hostile environments before. Suaran approached the human carefully. This small creature had been controlling the metal beast. It was not an animal at all, but a vehicle, a tool used by this strange being. The realization changed everything. These were not monsters invading their jungle. They were explorers, perhaps lost travelers seeking their way home. Over the next several hours, Marcus and the hunters established basic communication. He showed them pictures on his portable device, images of his home planet and the ship that had brought him to their world. The hunters shared food from their pouches, strange fruits and dried meat that tasted better than any military ration. Naya eventually overcame her fear. She was fascinated by the human technology, especially the mech suit that stood silently nearby. Marcus let her touch the metal plating, explaining through gestures how the machine worked. Her fear transformed into wonder. Koro remained suspicious but respectful. He examined the broken arrow that had failed to penetrate the mech's eye shield. Marcus showed him how the protective glass was designed to resist impacts. Then he produced a small metal knife from his belt and offered it as a gift. Koro accepted it with growing admiration for this small but clearly intelligent creature. As the sun began to set, painting the purple sky with streaks of orange and red, Suran made a decision. He would lead the human back to his village. The elders needed to see this being and hear about the world beyond the stars. Perhaps this meeting was not a threat but an opportunity. Marcus climbed back into his mech suit, and the metal giant came alive once more. But this time, when it walked through the jungle, 3 hunters walked beside it instead of hiding from it. The roar of its engines no longer seemed frightening. It was simply the sound of something new, something that would change their world forever. The journey to the village took 2 days. Along the way, Marcus helped the hunters by using his mech to clear a path through dense undergrowth. He also used his medical kit to treat a wound on Nea's leg that had been bothering her for weeks. She watched in amazement as the human medicine reduced her pain and cleaned the infection. When they finally reached the village, the entire population gathered to see the strange procession. Children screamed and mothers pulled them close. Warriors grabbed their weapons and formed defensive lines. But Suran walked ahead, his arms raised, calling for calm. He spoke to his people about what he had learned. This human was not an enemy. He came from a world far away, a world with incredible tools and knowledge. He meant them no harm and only wanted to return to his own kind. The village elder stepped forward. She was ancient, her blue skin faded to a lighter shade, but her eyes remained sharp and intelligent. She studied the human for a long time before finally speaking. Her words were simple, but carried great weight among her people. She said that the spirits of the forest had sent them a gift. This being from the stars had much to teach them. In return, they would help him find his way home. This was the beginning of something important, something that would benefit both their peoples. Marcus understood none of her words, but he recognized the meaning in her tone. He bowed his head in respect, a gesture that seemed to please the gathered crowd. When he looked up, he saw a smile spreading across the blue faces around him. That night, the village held a celebration. Fires burned bright, and drums echoed through the jungle. Marcus sat among his new friends, sharing stories through gestures and pictures. The hunters who had tracked him like prey now treated him like a brother. When morning came, Suran led a group of scouts to help Marcus find his base camp. The mech walked through the jungle once more, but now it carried supplies given by the village. The hunt that had begun with fear and suspicion ended with friendship and hope. The story of the human and his metal beast became legend among the people of that world. They spoke of the day when hunters became guides, when enemies became allies, and when 2 very different peoples found common ground in the depths of an ancient jungle. It was proof that even the most frightening encounter could lead to understanding, and that courage came not from strength alone but from the willingness to reach across the unknown and offer an open hand.